Hey everybody, it's me Stacy here at Scrapbooking Made Simple with another YouTube mini class for you today. Now, this has been a long awaited or asked for YouTube, and it's on embossing powders and embossing enamels. And it's going to be a lot of technique and a lot of hopefully information that will help you with embossing powders and embossing enamels. So I have got a lot to show. I'm not going to talk too much today. We're going to get started pretty much right away. But I do want to tell you that we have winners from last YouTube. Woo! When we used the Artful Card Kits from Hot Off the Press and Xyron, the Teresa Collins Xyron. So I'm very excited. We have two winners. Are you ready to hear if you're the winner chicken dinner? And it was from YouTube number 90. This will be YouTube number 91. I'm getting better looking at what YouTube I'm on before I start talking. All right, if you are Denise L-V. Denise, you're a winner. Congratulations. We have got goodies to send to you. And if you are Ruth Gibbs, yay, Ruth Gibbs, you too are a winner, and we have got hot off the press goodies to send to you. Congratulations to both of you. Now, how are you going to claim your prize? You're going to email us at asksms@earthlink.net and say, hey, Naomi, I am a winner from YouTube number 90. Woo! And she'll reply to you and get your goodies out to you just as quickly as possible. I'm very excited for you girls. I hope you enjoy your products. Now, how do you become a YouTube winner? Well, when you're done watching me, you post a comment to this YouTube on our YouTube channel, and you do have to be a subscriber to do that. So you just have to, if you're on Google, you can link via Google. Otherwise, just open up an account. It doesn't take much. Username, login, and then you can click subscribe and leave your comment, and you too may be a winner from YouTube. All right, Denise and Ruth, congratulations to both of you. Also, a quick update on the Xyron Spellbinders deal. We have worked out with Xyron a shipping schedule since it is close to 19,000 dies, and logistically there is no place for us to put 19,000 dies at one time. So Xyron is, we've set up a shipping schedule. It is going to come by truck in 3 different shipments, and then we have the most wonderful SMS volunteer peeps who are coming in to help bundle everything, and then we will start to ship. So you will know if your order is in process if you receive a credit card email saying we've charged your credit card. We won't do that until the first bundle has actually started to ship. We're expecting the first bundle to be here by the end of February. So if you get a credit card email saying that you've been charged for your Xyron bundle, know that it is being pulled, but that's going to still be a couple weeks from now. We've got to get them in, we've got to bundle them, we've got to charge them, and then we'll start shipping them. If you placed your order on the 25th, I do not know that there will be enough to cover. I'm not even sure there's enough to cover all the orders on the 24th. But what we will do is let you know. If it turns out that there is enough, or that we have maybe 9 out of the 12 dies, perhaps we can just reduce the price and see if you want to take the 9 dies. I don't know that there's going to be enough. They're shipping me everything that they have. I know we're good for basically all of the 21st or 24th. If you got your order in right at midnight, oh, you're fine, don't worry. It's more the orders on the 25th and later in the day on the 24th, getting up there in the evening. So hang tight. We'll keep you updated. I've been updating on Facebook, so if you're not on Facebook, you can always go to Facebook and read my updates. You don't have to join Facebook, but that's where I'm posting updates and perhaps in our emails as well. So if you're not on our email list, you want to go to www.shop@sms.com, and up in the right hand corner there's a little yellow box that says join our emails or subscribe to our newsletters. You'll want to do that because then we'll be sending out the updates. That's where updates will go to, and also that's where you find out about the newest product and everything that's happening, and we send 2 emails a week and it's always got something new in it. So join our email list. Last thing I want to talk about is the Sizzix Super Savers. Yes, they are spectacular at Scrapbooking Made Simple, and we still have them. Sizzix Super Savers is a new thing for us here at Scrapbooking Made Simple. It was a deal negotiated between us and Ellison that once a month we will have a super saver value deal that is exclusive to SMS. It'll be good from the 1st of the month through the 15th, and the product will be at a very deep discount. We have the bundles. We still have some bundles left, not too many, but inside the bundle, everything is 50% off, and it's on new product. I mean, this stuff is brand new at Sizzix.com, and they're $20 dies, and if you buy the bundle, they're 50% off. So we still have some of the open stock left, and we have a few bundles left. So go take a look and see if it's something you want from Sizzix at 50% off. Woohoo! Now, okay, I said it was my last thing, but I lied. This is my last thing. Today we're going to be featuring embossing powders from Stampendous. And these are exclusive embossing powders, and when they're gone, they're gone. They're very much like the Xyron deal. When it's gone, it's gone. However, I didn't put it on Facebook first. I put it here on YouTube. So, YouTube users, you are going to be able to get this first. Not Facebook, not even in the store at this point. We have announced that our store got to buy them, the local peeps got to buy them during the make and take, but any product left will not be available in the retail store. So if you're a local SMS peep and you want to come in and buy it, you're going to have to do it online with everybody else. Sorry, we are holding every last bottle for online customers, and it is exclusive. When it's gone, it's gone. And these embossing powders and embossing enamels are simply gorgeous. They will never be made again. They were just too expensive to manufacture in mass quantity. They had small amounts, 100 bottles of this, 200 bottles of that, and that was it. And they called us and they said, "Stacy, would you be interested?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'll be interested." And they're just yummy. So that's what we're going to be featuring on today. If you want to go see them, then I guess this is the second time I'm saying you can pause me. Okay, pause. There's my pause. There's another pause. There's another pause. Pause me, go run to the computer and see if it's something you're interested in, and then come back and finish watching the YouTube on the embossing powders and enamels and how to use them. But they really are lovely, and when they are gone, they are gone. Okay, that's it. I've talked enough. I'm going to get going. I'm going to tilt on down, and we're going to get started for the day. Okay, everybody. Bye. See? Ooh. Ah. These are some of the limited edition embossing powders. I mean, and they're more embossing enamels than anything else. I can't, my tripod's in the way. But they really are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 7, 10. Looks like there's 10 of them that are just magnificent. And everything from glitter to mermaid tears. Oh my gosh, mermaid tears has this iridescence to them. And the girls' night out, it's just so fun. And they are a little chunky, which gives you a really nice overall coverage. And they do have many different elements involved in them. It's not just, like the aubergine has got purples and blacks and silvers all melted into one. Look at the cranberry wine. It's just beautiful. So those are the limited edition ones, and I'll talk about those a little bit later, but I do want to get started for today. And I think with embossing powders, the best way to get started is actually going backwards before we go forwards. And I say that because Willy Wonka says you got to go forward to go backwards. I think that's what Willy Wonka said. So we're kind of going to go backwards before we go forwards, and we're going to talk about inks very, very quickly. Ink is important when you're using a clear embossing powder. Clear embossing powder. Lots of people own clear embossing powder, and the ink that you use is ever so important, because if you use the wrong ink, you will get the wrong result. Now, if you know your ABCs, everybody knows A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then you know your CDPs. And when I talk about CDPs, I'm talking about inks. I'm talking about chalk ink. There's your C. I'm talking about dye-based ink, there's your D, and I'm talking about pigment-based ink, there's your P. If you know your ABCs, you can remember your CDPs, chalk, dye, pigment. Now it doesn't matter if I'm showing it to you in a dewdrop size or a full size. Dye ink is dye ink, chalk ink is chalk ink, pigment ink is pigment ink, regardless of whatever shape or form it comes in. Full size, mini, marker, makes no difference. Chalk dye is the first in the alphabet, C, A, B, C. Well, C dries really quick, really, really fast. C does not give you enough time to stamp, throw embossing powder down on top of it, and heat it. It dries too fast. The embossing powder has nothing to stick to. So chalk ink is not an ink that you want to use when using a clear, well, any kind of embossing powder, but embossing powder, chalk ink will not work. It is the first letter you get to in the alphabet, A, B, C. C for chalk. D, dye ink. All of your mementos are dye ink. And again, it doesn't matter if it's the dewdrop size, the full size, the marker. A memento is a dye-based ink. Your Tim Holtz is a dye-based ink. The majority of your inks are dye-based. C and D are right next to each other in the alphabet. So C and D are very close to each other, and a dye-based ink dries almost as fast as a chalk-based ink. C and D right next to each other in the alphabet. So C dries the fastest, D dries almost as fast as C. Chalk and dye right next to each other in the alphabet, dry almost to the same speed. You cannot really use a dye-based ink for your embossing powders. Again, it dries too fast to hold the embossing powder, and the result you are not going to be happy with. Pigment ink. Now, you've got C and D, then you've got E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Pigment ink is way down the ABCs. It's all the way almost to the end. That's because pigment ink takes the longest to dry. It stays wet the longest amount of time. And pigment ink is what you want to use when you are using embossing powders. It's all the way at the end of the alphabet. So if you know your ABCs and you're out shopping and you see something that says chalk on it, you're going to think, where is that on the alphabet? Oh, that's really close to the front. That's a C. That dries really fast. So if you need something that's fast drying, you're going to want to buy a chalk. We like dye-based better because it works with Copics and everything, the mementos. But if you were looking at your mementos and going, gosh, can I use this to use my embossing powders with? A, B, C, D. No, it dries too fast. It's too close at the front of the alphabet. It's not going to work. But I have this brilliance here, and this brilliance says it's a pigment. Where does that fall in the alphabet? All the way to the end. So yes, you can use any pigment type of ink with your embossing powders. Doesn't matter if it's brilliance. We like brilliance because it's a Sucaniko Memento product. But if you've got pigment ink, this is what you're going to use. So again, if you know your ABCs, you can remember what ink is what just by remember C, D, P. Chalk dries the fastest. Dye dries almost as fast as chalk because they're right next to each other in the alphabet. And pigment. Pigment's all the way down at the end. It takes the longest to dry. Okay? So with that, I think we can move forward because that helps explain ink. If you're using the wrong product you're going to get the wrong result. That's just the way it is. If you're not using the right product, and inks are so confusing. You go out there on the market and my gosh, every manufacturer has ink. Tim Holtz has inks. Hero Arts has inks. Stampin' Up has inks. Sucaniko has inks. I mean, everybody has inks, but what does that mean? What kind of ink is it? Now you know. It's either a chalk ink, a dye ink, or a pigment ink. Now there is one more type of ink, which also starts with a P, which is permanent ink. And I'll just quickly tell you, when you think permanent ink, which would be your StazOn or your archival, you think Sharpie marker. You think permanent. Write with your Sharpie. You can write on glass with it. You can write on metal with it. You can, anything permanent. And again, permanent ink is not going to work with your embossing powders. Permanent ink has an alcohol base, very much like your Copic markers. So you want to stay with your pigment ink, CDP. ABCs and CDPs. And if you remember your CDPs when you're out shopping, you're not going to make a mistake and buy the wrong ink. Okay? Oh, I hope that helped. All right, we are going to move on because I want to talk to you about clear embossing powder. That's the first thing we're going to start with. And I'm going to be using my Brilliance ink. I have got my stamp here, and we are using Heartfelt Creations today. I've got Heartfelt Creations, which is what we did in our make and take. Now I have to tell you, yesterday Yvette and I were talking, and there is a stamp set that, or a die set that goes with this. It's all these little locks and keys. And I looked and looked and looked, and I'm like, Yvette, what the heck did I do with it? Do you know, because I only had one left after the make and take. We sold out, and we have a whole new shipment coming in for online orders. But I thought, what did I do with the die set that goes with this? There was this really nice lady who came in from, I think it was out of state, and she loved that set. I think I took the last one for sale off of it, and I think I let her buy it. I think it was my fault I can't find it. But anyway, there is a die set that goes with the Heartfelt Creations stamp sets, and I don't even have a picture of it, but that's okay. It'll be online. All right, so I do have my stamp here, and I'm working on an acrylic block. This is just a thin acrylic block. This happens to be a Tim Holtz grid block, and his blocks come, I think, 9 for $21.95, and if you buy them, you really never need to buy a block again. They're very thin. I like that because I can feel what I'm pushing into. It's not a thick block. I've also got my stamp mat here. Remember, you need gush. You need gush to stamp into. You need it to have good contact, and when it sinks down into that stamp mat, you get much better contact. Most stampers who say they don't stamp well are stamping on a hard surface, and there's nothing for that stamp to sink into. It's pushed on that hard surface, and it has no place to go. So this is half the size of the stamp mat. It's actually twice as big. It's $3.99. If you want it via online, we do have to cut it so that we can ship it to you. But really, this is half, and you take the other half and share it with a friend. We even cut it into quarters and use that for our make and takes. So I've got my stamp mat. I've got my stamp on a block, and this is all done by cling. All done by cling. And if it stops sticking, you just wash it with some Dawn dishwashing detergent in your block and your stamp, and it will, when it dries, it'll start clinging again. The more body oils we get, the more oils from our hands or embossing powders and stuff will make it stop clinging. Just take some Palmolive or Dawn or something gentle and wash it, and it will be fine. Dry it and it will stamp again. Okay, I have got my paper here, and I am using smooth paper. I am using Whirlwind smooth paper, and we've got an exclusive coming on Whirlwind paper next week. So this is beautiful paper to stamp on. It is completely and totally smooth, and it is a very nice cardstock weight. No, this paper will not work well with your Copic markers, but it stamps like a beaut. It's just gorgeous. But if you're thinking about Copics, this is not the paper for you. You really want Copic paper. I'm going to ink up my stamp, and immediately you can see how juicy that is. You can see how juicy that is. Now, I got my hands all white. I am going to show you quickly, although that's wet, but what is this? No, it's not a donut hole. This is talcum powder put inside, you're not gonna believe this, put inside a pantyhose. I had knee-high pantyhose left over from who knows when, and they sell these little things, these little pouches for like $6. And what's inside of it is talcum powder. And people say that they have a hard time with their embossing powder because it leaves little bits and pieces of embossing powder everywhere. This is what takes care of it. So I took a knee-high pantyhose, I put some talcum powder in it, I twisted it, wrapped it back into each other, twisted it again, wrapped it one more time, and then cut off the top and tied a knot. What this does is you wipe this. You don't get a lot of it. You just need to wipe it over your paper, and it's going to take the static out of the embossing powder and let it fall to the side, so you don't get those little dots every here and there of embossing powder left over and heated, so you don't have a beautifully clean image. The stamp image might look good, but there's these little random dots. You just do this. Now, they do sell them for $5 or $6. I get that. But if you can make it, you know me, I would rather have another ink. I would rather have another embossing powder. And again, it's just talcum powder put into an old, a knee-high pantyhose, and then just spun and twisted into each other and spun and twisted into each other, and then I just capped it off, and I keep it in my little baggie. But why spend the money if you don't need to? Okay, so now I'm going to stamp. Let's just ink this up one more time, make sure it's good and wet. I've got my Brilliance pigment ink here. And Now when I'm pressing, I'm giving good coverage. I am not doing chest compressions. We are not trying to revive the stamp. Just nice all over coverage and then pull up. And then done. You don't have to push so hard, especially when you're using the stamp mat, because when you push, it's already giving in. And there's my stamped image. Beautiful, perfect. Couldn't ask for better than that. Now I'm gonna take my clear embossing powder. Now we do happen to love the Zing embossing powder for clear. It's the only type of Zing that we carry is the clear, and that's because we find it doesn't yellow over time. I'm gonna dump it right on top. Yes, I'm a dumper. I'm going to kind of shimmy it all over. And I have got a card down here, just an A2 card, because it's got that score line. I'm gonna tap it on off. Now because I put my talcum powder all over, none of that clear embossing powder stayed anywhere. It went all off. It took the static off. So if you are finding that you've got maybe and you're using a black or a gold, little bits of black embossing powder here and there, or little bits of gold, try this. Yes, you can go buy one. I'm sure you can find one, but you can do this. Everybody, I did this. You can do this. Save the money. Buy another stamp, buy another ink, buy another embossing powder. All right, now I'm gonna take my card base, because that's where my extra is, and I'm just gonna put it right back into my embossing powder. Now I have my heated tool. This is my heated tool. It's the Ranger product. I really like it. Yes, it is slower than those cylinder looking tools. It does not heat as fast, but it is quiet and it doesn't burn your paper. And you can be heating it here and have embossing powder in a pile over here, and it doesn't blow anything away. Now the heated tools were on back order for months and months and months, and God bless you, there were 2 of you ladies out there that waited for them to come in. You waited months and months, and they finally came in, and we shipped them out to you, but now I have lots of them. I've got oodles of these, so if you want one, now's the time to get one, and we'll put it on a YouTube Yummy, because my gosh, it was forever, and these 2 women were the most patient and forgiving. I just can't tell you thank you enough, but Ranger finally got them in, and we finally got them out to you. Anyway, I'm not gonna sit here and I'm not going to heat this, because it's just gonna take too long, but I do wanna talk to you about how you heat. When you start to heat, a lot of ladies do this. And they're doing this, and they're doing this. What happens is that the heat never gets onto one space long enough to fully take the powder from powder to solid. I want you to try not to do this. I want you to start down here, and when you see it start to turn, I want you gradually to work your way up. And I don't want you to come back down and do the down again, because you can burn your embossing powder. Yes, it will burn. If you overcook it, you don't get the result you want. And gosh, when we did the make and take, there was, I think, almost 65 women who came and did the make and take. Half of them kept going over it and were burning their embossing powder. So don't make that mistake. You can start at the top and work your way on down. But once you've seen it change from a powder to a solid, don't go back. Be done. I know, resist temptation. I know, and you just want to keep going, but resist. Sometimes less is more, and this is one of those cases. So if you start at the bottom and work your way up, or start at the top and work your way down, once you've seen it turn from a powder to a solid, move on and don't go back. Don't look back. So I have got one that's done. So here it has the white powder on it, and you can kind of see that it's a little soft in color because of that. The white hasn't been heated to solid yet. Here it is when it's done. And what it has on it is that beautiful sheen from the brilliance and that raised feeling from the clear embossing powder. Beautiful. So from that to that, and you can see the color difference. Beautiful. Easy to do. Now I could go heat this now. I could go heat this in 10 minutes. As long as that embossing powder's still there, I'm good. Okay? Just very simple to do. Now, you can take your Brilliance or your pigment embossing powder, you can stamp with it and put a solid color of embossing powder over the top of it. Any solid color, and it will work too. However, instead of having the blue underneath like this, it would have a gold underneath. So let's do that really quick, or whatever color you've done. So let me ink that up really fast. So if you've got this old pigment stamp pad that you don't use at all, use it with your colored embossing powders. I'm going to stamp again. Let's just give it a quick stamp again. And pull up. Again, I'm not doing chest compressions. Ooh, lovely. And this time I will use, I've got, what is this, detail? Yeah, detail copper. So I've got a colored embossing powder. I'm going to put right over it. Because it's a pigment ink, it will stay wet long enough for that embossing powder to adhere. Kind of move it all over. Tap it off. Now when I heat this, the blue is going to disappear and all you're going to see is copper. That blue, that little blue underlining that you see, that's all going to disappear. And when I heat this, you will see nothing but copper. All the blue Brilliance is doing is acting as the medium to hold the embossing powder. So if you have an old permanent that you're not using, use it up. Use it when you use your embossing powders. It works just fine and the color will be completely gone. Okay? So let me put this away. And can you see how I don't have any little pieces of copper, any little pieces of embossing powder around there? That's because I used the talcum powder. The people who make those little pouches are not going to be happy with me. But that's okay. It is what it is. I'm sure many of you will find it more convenient to just go out and buy them, and that's fine. I just as soon tell you how to make it. and when you make one, it lasts forever. You never have to make another one. Okay, so that is using clear embossing powder. Clear embossing powder with the right ink. Pigment ink. Remember, CDP. Chalk dye pigment. If you know your ABCs, you will never forget what ink you're looking to buy. Chalk dries the fastest, dye dries almost as fast as chalk, and pigment is all the way at the end of the spectrum, end of ABCs. It takes the longest to dry, and that's what you want to use when you're using embossing powder. Okay, so I've got some samples here. Remember I was telling you that you could take any color ink, pigment ink, and then emboss on top of it and it would change the color. So we took a Brilliance, we took green. We did the whole strip green and then we took a rust color embossing powder and went right over the top of it, and that green is totally hidden, completely hidden. Did it with the blue. Again, the whole thing at one time was all green, then we dumped the embossing powder over the top, heated it, and that blue covered up that green perfectly. So use what you have. Use what you have. Go dig out some of those pigment inks that you've got and use them. You can use them in place of a VersaMark when you're using colored embossing powders. You can. So you might as well use them until they're bone dry and then get yourself a VersaMark. All right? So these all started this green. This is a Brilliance ink. We did the whole thing green and then we used color embossing powder to show you how it totally covers up without any problem. All right, so that's using Brilliance ink with basically your clears. Now I want to talk to you about using your VersaMark and some of the different types. I've got a whole bunch of different types of embossing powders here. There is everything from a pearl. This one has Pearlustic by Stampendous, to detailed. we've talked about detailed embossing powder a lot. Detailed embossing powder to chunky white embossing powder to glittery embossing powder. There is just tons of different embossing powders out on the market, and they all do pretty much the same thing. You have to heat them and know that an embossing enamel is the same as an embossing powder. It's just another name for it, and it's a little bit chunkier, a little bit thicker. So when you are using, let's see, what have I got here? Let's do a fine embossing versus a chunky embossing. Let me pull here. I have got my stamp here. Well, and again, I'm using Heartfelt Creations. This time I'm going to use my VersaMark. If I really wanted to, yes, I could use my Brilliance. It will do the exact same thing. I know, there's my VersaMark. Gasp! It looks horrible, but it still works. So even though it's embedded with all these different colors of embossing powders over the years, it still works and it doesn't transfer the embossing powder. So I'm gonna still use it. Until it doesn't work, I'm gonna use it, and I just keep re-inking it. Okay, so I've got my stamp on here. I'm going to stamp away. And pull up. And I've got my impression. Don't know if you can see it, but it's a, oh yeah, you can, good. It's a watermark. Right there. Now I could let that dry and it would just leave a watermark there, but I am going to put on a detailed embossing powder. Detailed embossing powder is what you want to use when you have words or fine lines. Any kind of words or very intricate stamps, very fine lined, very detailed stamps, you really want to work with a detailed embossing powder. Okay, so I've got it there. And again, no extra around the outside because I used my little makeshift MacGyvered pouch here with talcum in it. And I'm going to dump that back in. Next, I'm going to pull a chunky embossing enamel. Same thing. It's an embossing powder and it has to be heated, but it's much heavier, much chunkier. I'm going to use the aged copper. And let's stamp again. So I'm going to put it in my VersaMark. And I'm going to stamp again. Give a good press, but no chest compressions. I've got my gush pad, so I'm sinking into it. I'm working with a Tim Holtz grid block, so it's not so heavy, so I can feel how much pressure I'm adding. And then I'm going to pull up. And I've got my image. This time I'm going to use that chunky embossing powder. And can you, I don't know if you can tell, it's the grains are much thicker, much heavier. And I'm gonna spread it around. And you can instantly see that it's much grainier than the detailed. Harder to see, harder to make out the image than the detailed. When you're using embossing powder, you have to use the right powder for what it is you're trying to do. If you've got something, oh, my wish is upside down. Oh well. If you've got something very detailed like this with fine lines and words, you're not going to get the best result. using an embossing powder that is chunky. You want to use, can you see how chunky that is? You want to use a detailed embossing powder. And what we say about detailed embossing powder is that you can do fat, heavy lines and solid images with detailed embossing powder, but you can never do thin, delicate lines and words with a chunky embossing powder. So I want to show you what these two look like. So here's a stamp that I did with the detailed embossing powder, and you see all the beautiful fine lines, you see all the detail. Here's the exact same stamp in a chunky embossing powder, and you can so see the difference. You lose all the detail, you lose the wording. It's very difficult to see. It just looks rough and bubbly as opposed to very pretty. So that's using detail versus a chunky on a more detailed stamp. You need to use the proper embossing powder for what you're doing. If I heated this, it would look the same as this. One looks great, one not so much. All I did was use the correct embossing powder. That's all I did. This is never a chunky or an enamel embossing powder's never gonna look good. Now, if you're going for a grungy look, well then by all means, this will do. But if you're going for something pretty, if you're going for something a little more elegant where you can see those fine, beautiful, detailed lines, it's using the right embossing powder. So that is the difference between a detailed embossing powder and an embossing enamel or a chunkier. So when do you use that chunky? Well, let me show you. When do you use that chunky? So we've been stamping, but you can use embossing powders for die cutting too. And I hear you going, what? Yes, you can use your embossing powders for die cutting as well. And I wanna show you really quickly. I'm just gonna move this out of the way real fast. I'm gonna bring over my Big Shot machine because I have got a Heartfelt Creation die right here. It's absolutely gorgeous. Heartfelt Creations die. And some paper, random paper. I've got my magnetic cutting plate because I'm using my wafer thin die. So it's going to stay in place. See? I put my cut plate down first. This time, my cut plate down first, my paper, my die, which is going to magnetize right to it so that nothing moves. See how nothing moves? And I'm using my Big Shot machine because, of course, the Big Shot machine is, let's say it all, the machine of choice at Scrapbooking Made Simple. And then I've got my do not cut plate on top because you always like to have one of your plates very nice and flat and smooth so it goes through very easy. And I'm gonna send it through. Now I'm gonna roll this through twice because it's a more intricate die. So I'm gonna send it forward and then I'm gonna send it back. Now keep in mind, I could have used wax paper. I could have used wax paper to help it come out easier. Hopefully this is gonna pop right out because I forgot about my wax paper. Oh yeah, piece of cake. It's got all the little bits and pieces in there. I'm gonna put it over to the side. Now, if I had wanted to, before I put my paper down, I could have taken a little bit of wax paper. Put wax paper down, then put my paper on top of the wax paper so that sandwiched in between the die and my paper was the wax paper. Roll it through, and what happens is this wax paper acts as a release and it helps it pop the die cut pop right on out. So let me just take that out. So for those of you who have never seen it used with wax paper before, just quickly, my die, so my magnetic platform, my cut plate, my paper, my wax paper, my die on top of it, and my do not cut plate. And then I would send it through my machine. And what this wax paper is going to do is help act as a release. So if you've got a die where the paper is really tough to get out and it's sticking in there, try to use the wax paper. You will find it's much, much easier. So let me put that off to the side. So I now have got this die cut. And maybe it's not out of the paper I love. Maybe it's just out of scratch paper. Just whatever I had left laying around. That's okay. You can then take your VersaMark. You can, let's just do it on a, take it and put it on top of your die. Put my die cut here. Grab a color that I love, and this is where the heavier, chunkier embossing powders come in. I'm going to use the moss green here because that's what I've got done, and the mossy green is part of the exclusive bunch of embossing powders that we have from Stampendous, and I'm just going to dump this all over. Now yours will come in a nice pretty jar. Mine is in bags because I got the samples that they had done. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to dump it all over where I put my VersaMark. This is where the embossing enamels really shine and really do well, is when you're using them on die cuts. Now you can see I've got half of it with embossing powder and half of it without. Now let me dump all my mossy green back in. So I don't make a mess. Okay. Now I would take my heated tool and I would heat this until the powder becomes a solid. And you can see it happening. It's the most amazing thing watching people who have never seen embossing powder go from a powder to a solid, because their eyes just get wide and it's this aha moment for them. It's just wonderful. And every time I see it, it's always the same. It's spectacular. I love it. And I would heat this starting in one place, and I would slowly move my heat tool until I have heated the entire thing and changed it from a powder to a solid. But I would not go back over here unless there was a little spot that didn't get done. If it's completely melted, don't go back. So then we have, from that to that. Can you see how it completely covered? I used polka dot paper. Can you see how it completely covered the paper? And just took paper that you were going to throw away. Don't throw it away. If you've got scraps that are good enough to die cut, then they're good enough to use some kind of an embossing powder. It will transform the paper into something magnificent. Nobody needs to know that it was polka dotted paper that you had from 6 years ago because it was at a garage sale for 10 cents a sheet. I won't tell, honest. And if I see any of this polka dot paper at our garage sale in March, but it really does just transform paper you would maybe throw away into just happiness. Don't use good paper if you're going to use embossing powder over the top of it. Use stuff you don't like because nobody's gonna see it. And again, this is where the embossing enamels come in because they're heavier, they're chunkier, they're thicker. Here it is the same with the silver. I think this is the vintage silver, which is also part of the exclusive collection. On that piece of paper that maybe I would have never used again. But oh my gosh, it just makes that die absolutely beautiful. It just transforms it, and it gives it some substantial weight to it, which also helps. And then you could go in and you could stamp on top of this with StazOn. You could decorate it. I mean, I think it's just absolutely lovely just in the silver, just as a frame. But take that yucky paper that you may not like and go in and use it. Now I did one with an Anna Griffin die. Let me pull this over here. I did one with an anagriffin die where I just cut blue paper with an anagriffin, and then I used the vintage gold over the top of it. So you can see that blue just completely disappears, and that magnificent, majestic gold just comes straight through. Ooh! I love this. Just basic whirlwind, smooth and silky cardstock, which is ideal to die cut with and stamp with, and then embossing powder over the top. Okay? So your chunkies are awesome on your die cuts. Your chunkies are also really good for giving a grungy type look. And when I say a grungy type look, I mean where it's just randomly dispersed. And let's say we had, let me grab a, let's say, do I have one? Oh, right here. Okay, so I've done this embossing with a detailed embossing powder. Now I want to put some grunge along the edges of it, and I want to mix in some, I just want to make it a little bit more whatever. You can take that detailed embossing powder, or the the aged copper, the enamels. You can use that embossing powder, the chunky, the aged embossing powders. It's thick. Ooh, I just spilled. It's uber thick, and I can just put it right around. Now you see I didn't put any kind of VersaMark or ink down. It almost has the consistency of that raw sugar, is what it kind of feels like. I put no stamp down, I put no VersaMark down, and then I'm just kind of moving it. Now I could take my heat tool, and from the bottom, I could melt this into the paper to give more of a grungy look effect. But what does that mean? Well, and you want to heat it from the bottom, and this tool will not burn your paper. This is the tool that allows you to do this. And I could take glass glitter and throw it in there, or fragments and throw it in there, or mica and throw it in there, because as this chunky embossing powder turns from a powder to a solid, those pieces of glass glitter or mica will melt into it as well and become permanent as long as I heat it from the bottom. If I heat it from the top, because I have not used any kind of a medium to hold it in place, no VersaMark, no pigment ink, it could just blow away because there's nothing keeping it where it is. You have to heat it from the bottom. Ooh, I did make a mess. Let me put that back and let me show you what I mean. Let me show you an example. So here's one of the layout pages we have to show you at the very end. Hope you can see it all. There's one of our layout pages. We stamped and used the mossy green. This is a stamp all the way up to make the border. And then we heated it and took that mossy green embossing powder from a powder to a solid, and we actually made a border for our paper. But over on this end, I wanted to add a little bit of pop of color that coordinated with it. So I took one of the chunkies and I drizzled it on. This one I think happens to be brownstone. And I drizzled it onto the paper. No VersaMark, no ink at all, no brilliance, no pigment, no VersaMark. I just drizzled it all over, and then I took my heat tool and I heated from the bottom to give me that element on my layout. The chunkies and the enamels are meant to be used more as an accent when you're using it with stamps, because it's so thick that it doesn't, unless you're using a solid stamp or a thick lined stamp, it doesn't look great. But man, when you mix it in with your other elements, it looks phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And the mossy, this isn't as chunky as some of the others. It just embossed beautifully. Okay? So the chunkies, that's what they're really more used for, is as an element. You've stamped your image, now you want to add stuff around it. Oh my goodness, they're just gorgeous. There's also embossing powders called, let's see, what did I do with the blue? Pearlistic. It's a pearl based. It has a pearlescent look to it when you're done stamping. Let's see, I don't know how well it's gonna do with this detailed stamp, but let's try it. So I'm gonna VersaMark up my stamp. I'm gonna give myself a good stamp. No chest compressions, just nice pressure. Oh, I forgot to do my little, let's hope it doesn't stay. Let's hope that there's not a whole bunch left over. I know, I'm a dumper. But it all goes back in anyways. Oh, pretty good. I don't have any little bits and pieces, so that's good. But when you heat this, it changes from this very drab, very boring blue to this amazing, gorgeous blue. That is the same, exactly the same embossing powder. Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely gorgeous. The same. Now I want to show you this embossing powder when you've overheated it. Remember I said you start from one end and work your way up, or start from the top and work your way down, or from the side. However you do it, the idea is to not do this and go around and around and keep heating the same place more than once. Oh, Stacy, what did I do with it? I just had that little flower. Uh-oh. Well, let me find my sample. My little flower disappeared of the one that got overheated. I can show it to you in the silver. My overheated flower. So here's a silver. That's done beautifully, embossed beautifully. Here's my overheated silver. Can you see the difference? Can you see all the little imperfections, especially like on this one, this side? It's been overheated. You cooked it too long. When that happens, that means you went too long. Gosh, I just don't know what I did. Oh, what I did with it. At any rate, you don't want to overheat. See that? That just doesn't look good. When you get that result, that means you heated it too long. You need to come back and get this result. That's what you're looking for. All right, and it's the same if you use a glitter embossing powder. There's glitter embossing powders. Let's stamp with my glitter embossing powder. Oop, this time I am going to remember to do it. Just a little bit of my talcum powder, baby powder, whatever. Okay, let's take a glittered embossing powder. Can you see the glittery in there? Yes, it's embossing powder. It would heat up as well. We're gonna dump it in. Oop. Dump it on. Tap it off. And that turns into that. Just a little bit of glittery goodness. That heats to that. So there are tons of different types of embossing powders on the market. It just depends upon which one you like and if you're using it for the right application. You need to have a pigment-based ink or a VersaMark to be able to use your embossing powders. And there's everything, like I said, from detailed embossing powder to enamels to the embossing powder that people bought, the chunky white, where we literally just dripped it on the top to make snow and we heated it from the bottom. It's picking the right embossing powder for the right stamp, for the right technique. And that, I think, is where most people get confused and have problems. Detailed embossing powder is always going to be your go-to because it will work for everything. Chunkies are always going to be what you want when you're wanting to add the thickness, when you're wanting to do those die cuts. And I mean, look at how thick. These are all the chunkies. Look at how thick that is. It's just beautiful. It covers up those die cuts and gives them stability and a look that is just absolutely amazing. Look at how fabulous that is. All done with your enamels, the chunkier enamels. The glitters. Glitters give you lots of fun. This is another glitter. I don't know if you can see it because it's white, but that's got a glitter to it. You've got what they call shabby embossing powders. Shabby has a little bit of a color and a little bit of a gold or a silver sparkle mixed into it and some white, and it just gives it a good shabby look to it. And they come in pink and blue and I think green, but a shabby embossing powder. This is the aged enamel. Is it bronzed aged enamel? Yep, oh no, aged copper. This is aged copper. But can you see how thick and rich that is? And yes, it has those specks of green going through it. It's a mix of embossing powders to give you that look. Now, also with embossing powders, and I'm still missing it's gonna turn up somewhere. I don't know what I did with it. Holy smokes. Anyway, there is also a VersaMark pen and a smaller VersaMark. If you're not doing a lot of embossing, you might want to just use the smaller VersaMark. But people ask all the time, what's the pen for? Well, the pen is your oops pin, is really what it is. It also allows you to emboss just a portion of a stamp or just a portion of a die cut. If I wanted to stamp my stamp, and all I wanted that was to be embossed is the center part that says wish or I wish. I could take my pen and I could go over just the portion I want to have embossing powder and just do the portion that I want. That's what the pen is for. Or if I've stamped with it, with my stamp, and I was very quick and I just gave a quick push and I lifted up and I said, oh man, I didn't get it all. All I have to do is go in. Instead of restamping, if you can see where it is you missed, you can just go in and fill that little line. Or let's say I'm using my pigment. And I stamp with my pigment. And I'm going to color that with copper embossing powder. But I can see that I missed that down there. I see that I didn't get that flower or those leaves down there really well. I can just come in here and just kind of draw those in because I don't want to restamp. That's going to be difficult. To line everything up, I can just draw that color, that VersaMark in there, throw my copper embossing powder down, and now because it's got the VersaMark down there, the whole thing will be covered in copper. and I haven't lost that image. It really is a great oops pin, or a pin when you want to be very specific about what you want to emboss. If all I wanted to emboss was the key, the heart and the key, I could clean this off and just color in the heart and the key and stamp it and just emboss that part of the stamp. That's what the pin is for. It's always important to have because you never know. You don't want to stamp and stamp and stamp to try to get the image perfect every time. If you have your little pin and you make a little oops, you just go in there and dot that little VersaMark in there and away you go. You put your embossing powder over the top of it and poof, you're good. So we have talked about a ton today. We have talked about glittered embossing powders and chunky embossing powders and detailed embossing powders and clear embossing powders. We've talked about the ABCs and the CDPs of ink and why you need to use the right ink when you're using embossing powder. You will not get a good look unless you're using the right ink. C, chalk ink dries the fastest. D, dye ink dries almost as fast as chalk, and P is for pigment, and it's all the way down at the end of the line and it takes longer to dry, so it's perfect for the embossing powder to cling onto it and hold on to it. We talked about how you can take your die cuts and use that beautiful chunky embossing powders that you have. Stampendous makes the most beautiful chunky thick embossing powders to cover up your dies. Take yucky paper that you were going to throw away, do a beautiful die cut out of it, and then change the entire look of it by using that embossing powder. Everybody has embossing powder in their stash. This is some of the amazing things that you can do with it. It transforms the entire look of the paper. And remember, don't burn your embossing powder. If you stay in a place too long, you see that? It's not pretty anymore. It burns the embossing powder. And if you would like, you can make your own little pouch. It's just got talcum in it. I used a knee-high pantyhose, and you're just going to rub it over the top of your paper. That's all you're going to do. And then stamp, put your embossing powder down, tap it off, and that will keep it from all those little bits and pieces coming over. Now they do sell them and you can buy them, but you can also make it with talcum powder. It's very, very, very simple. And my VersaMark pad looks like this. If yours looks like that too, yay! I've been using it the entire time. You've seen me stamp with it the entire time, and even though it looks grungy and awful, the stamps have been coming out fine, and the embossing powder that is now embedded into it has not transferred. So just because it looks yucky doesn't mean you have to throw it away. It's fine. I don't know if you'll be able to see the watermark, but it's working just fine. All right, that was an awful lot to show you. I think I'm going to show you some samples now, and hopefully this was a help. Hopefully you realize now you can take those inks that you have, the Brilliance inks or whatever pigment ink, and just throw embossing powder over the top of it and it will cover it up. You don't have to keep it that color. It is a great medium to use your embossing powders with. So if you have a pigment ink pad, you don't necessarily have to have a VersaMark. Most people end up with both of them, but if you do have a pigment ink pad, you can be using all of these powders as well. But eventually you'll probably want your VersaMark. All right, let me show you some samples. I started with this one, and this is the layout. Let me see if I can get some of this stuff out of the way. This is the layout that we did. We used embossing powder for the laugh, we used it for the leaves, and we used it to add some texture and some color down at the bottom. And Mary Lynn did this one, and it didn't take her 4 hours this time. Woo! So we also have this layout that she did. And here we used the Mermaid Tears, which is one of the exclusive embossing powders. And we took a My Favorite Things die, we die cut it out, and then we used the Mermaid Tears because that Mermaid Tears just has the most beautiful, beautiful opalescence. Same thing here. This is a My Favorite Things die, and we put VersaMark all over it, and then put the embossing powder on top, heated it up, as well as the corners. So here is another layout for you that Mary Lynn did using embossing powder on the dies and the corners and on the sentiment. So you can use embossing powders in your layouts. It doesn't always have to be, you're not always stamping with it. You can see how we've used it with die cuts, and my gosh, you could take buttons and put some VersaMark on buttons and put your embossing powder on top of your buttons and heat your buttons and make them a totally different color. You could do that with brads. Put some VersaMark on top of your brads and dip your brads into the embossing powder and heat it and make your brad a totally different color. There's so much to be done with embossing powders. Another card sample. This is one of the this is one of the keys that comes with the die set that I don't have to show you. And this also comes with the die set that I don't have to show you, the label here and the keys there. And we've used the embossing powders that are coming in the exclusives for these cards. Here we just made the stamp and just used the pretty stamp from Heartfelt Creations. And another one. And here you can see we did a little bit of the embossing powder just around the edges and the corners, just to give a little pop, a little something. And we heated it from underneath. And the tag. And these are all die cuts. This isn't any stamping at all. And then last but not least, the one we did for the make and take. Everybody made this at the make and take. So this is part of the die cut that comes with the die and the key, and we used the aubergine and added a little bit of grunge on the top, and the background is a stamp that goes with the collection. Really pretty. And so let's see. The stamp sets we showed are from Heartfelt Creations. There's that background stamp that you just saw. Really pretty stamps. And again, online we'll show you the die that matches all of these, that layers and goes with all of these. So there's the collection from Heartfelt Creations. And then today I was using the magnetic platform. We'll put the magnetic platform on sale today. We'll put the heated tool on sale today. We will put the Heartfelt Creations dies that we used and stamps that we used for all the samples today on a YouTube Yummy. Just know if you're a local peep, you can come in and get everything except for the embossing powders. Those are only going to be available online on a YouTube Yummy because they are exclusive, and you guys did have first chance when we did the make and take. So now this is for online peeps, and we'll list these. We'll probably do a complete buy, I want it all, and then we'll have some in individual colors, all on a YouTube Yummy. All right, it has been long. Holy smokes, it has been really long, and I know it's long, but it's me, Stacy. It's Scrapbooking Made Simple. I knew this was going to be a lengthy one. I hope you learned something. I hope you saw how useful embossing powders can be and how easy they can be if you use them correctly. The right ink, the right embossing powder will make the most beautiful combination. And get out those die cuts and use those die cuts. They truly make the most beautiful. I mean, how can you go from that to that? It blows my mind. Same thing with this one. From that to that. Oh my gosh, fabulous. So if you're not a stamper, that doesn't mean that embossing powders aren't for you. This is another way of using them. This is getting the most out of your money. So it's me, Stacy. Where are you going to find all of these great products? You're going to find them at www.shop@sms.com. The word shop, the word @sms.com. And we will see you next time somebody's knocking at the door. So I think I better go now, everybody, okay? Talk to you later. Bye.